Years old, I finally got the promotion I'd worked 15 years for. VP of Marketing, $250,000 salary, stock options worth millions. To celebrate, I took my older brother Marcus and his wife, Vanessa, to the finest steakhouse in the city. He smiled. He raised his glass and toasted my success. And then, when he thought no one was watching, he tried to poison me. What Marcus didn't know was that someone else was watching, and that one quiet warning would set in motion a chain of events that would expose a web of lies so deep it would destroy everything he'd built. Before I continue this story, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you believe that success should be earned, not stolen. The restaurant was called the Capitol Grill, the kind of place where reservations are made weeks in advance, and the silence between conversations carries weight. The lighting was low and amber, casting everything in a warm, expensive glow. White tablecloths stretched across tables like fresh snow, and the gentle clinking of crystal and silver created a rhythm that felt almost sacred. I sat across from Marcus and Vanessa, watching them in the soft candlelight. My brother looked good. He always did. At 45, Marcus still had that easy charm that had gotten him through life. His suit was perfectly tailored, his smile bright and genuine looking. Vanessa sat beside him in a dress that probably cost more than my first car, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant twist, her jewelry catching the light. They looked like success. They looked like the kind of people who belonged in a place like this. But I knew better. I'd always known better. "Sarah," Marcus said, raising his champagne glass. Vanessa lifted hers to match. I raised my own glass, filled with sparkling water and cranberry juice. 5 years sober, 5 years of clarity I wouldn't trade for anything. To my brilliant little sister, VP of Marketing at 42, Mom and Dad would be so proud. The mention of our parents hit me like it always did, a sharp ache in my chest that never quite healed. They'd died when I was 12, and Marcus was 15. A car accident on a rainy Tuesday that changed everything. Marcus became my guardian, my parent, my whole world. He raised me, worked 2 jobs to keep us in our childhood home, helped me with homework, taught me to drive, walked me down the aisle at my wedding, even though that marriage didn't last. He was the only family I had left. "Thank you," I said, my voice catching slightly. "I couldn't have done it without you, Marcus. You know that." His eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw the brother I remembered, the teenager who held me while I cried for our parents, the young man who sacrificed his own college dreams to make sure I could go to mine. "You did this all on your own, sis," he said. "All I did was believe in you." Vanessa reached across the table and placed her cold hand on mine. "We're just so happy for you, Sarah. Really, this promotion, it changes everything for you, doesn't it?" There was something in the way she said it, a sharpness hidden beneath the sweetness. "It does," I agreed carefully. "The salary is incredible, and the stock options vest over 5 years. It's more money than I ever imagined making." "Stock options," Marcus repeated, his smile widening. "That's the real prize, isn't it? I read somewhere that executive stock packages can be worth millions." "They can be," I said, watching his face. "Mine are worth about 2 million if the company keeps performing well." Vanessa's grip on my hand tightened imperceptibly. "That's extraordinary. Have you thought about what you'll do with it all? Updated your will, your beneficiaries, anything like that?" The question hung in the air, inappropriate in its directness. "I haven't really thought that far ahead," I lied. I had thought about it. I'd thought about it constantly since the divorce. My ex-husband was out of the picture. Marcus was still listed as my primary beneficiary from years ago, back when I had nothing to leave anyone. "You should," Marcus said, his tone shifting to something more serious, almost paternal. You're not getting any younger, Sarah. And, with your sleep apnea, you really should have everything in order, just in case. There it was, the mention of my medical condition, my sleep apnea diagnosis from 3 years ago, the CPAP machine I used every night to make sure I kept breathing while I slept. Marcus knew all about it. He'd been with me at the doctor's appointment when I got the diagnosis. He'd helped me set up the machine the first night. I'm only 42, Marcus, I said lightly, trying to laugh it off. I think I've got a few good years left. Of course you do, he said quickly. Too quickly. I just mean, it's responsible to have things in order. That's all. The waiter arrived with our entrees. A welcome interruption. Prime ribeye for Marcus. Chilean sea bass for Vanessa. Filet mignon for me. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, the conversation drifting to safer topics. Work gossip, vacation plans, a new restaurant Vanessa wanted to try, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The questions about my will, the reference to my sleep apnea, the way Vanessa kept looking at me with eyes that were calculating, measuring, assessing. Halfway through the meal, the piano player in the corner began a new song, something slow and romantic from decades past. Marcus's face lit up. "Vanessa, darling," he said, standing and extending his hand. "They're playing our song. Dance with me." Vanessa accepted with a practiced smile, and they made their way to the small dance floor near the grand piano. I watched them move together, their bodies swaying in perfect rhythm. From a distance, they looked like the picture of happiness, the devoted couple, still in love after 10 years of marriage. But I knew the truth. I'd co-signed the loan for their house 5 years ago when their credit was too damaged to qualify a loan. I'd given them money for Vanessa's design business that never seemed to produce any actual clients. I'd watched Marcus's behavior change over the years, becoming more secretive, more distant, more desperate. I turned my attention back to my drink, the deep red cranberry juice mixed with sparkling water, served in an elegant crystal glass. It looked almost like wine, which was the point. In social situations like this, I like to blend in. 5 years sober, but the world still expected you to have a drink in your hand. I lifted the glass to my lips, and that's when I noticed him. A security guard was approaching my table. He was older, maybe in his early 60s, with silver hair and a posture that spoke of military training. His uniform was crisp, his expression neutral, but purposeful. He moved with quiet determination, his eyes fixed on me. He stopped beside my chair, leaning in slightly as if to share a confidence. "Miss," he said, his voice low and steady. It was calm, but there was an undeniable urgency beneath the surface. "I don't mean to alarm you." He paused, his eyes flicking toward the dance floor, where Marcus and Vanessa were still swaying to the music. Then, back to me. "I was standing near the bar just now. I saw your male companion when he came back to the table a few minutes ago, while you were looking at your phone. He thought no one was watching." The guard's jaw tightened. "I saw him pour something from a small vial into your drink." The world stopped. The music from the piano faded into white noise. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversation, the warm glow of the restaurant, all of it disappeared. All I could hear was the frantic, thunderous pounding of my own heart. I stared at the man, whose name tag read David. His face was a mask of professional concern, but in his eyes, I saw something else, genuine worry and certainty. He was telling the truth. I didn't gasp. I didn't shout. 15 years in corporate marketing, negotiating with executives and managing crises, had taught me to control my reactions. But inside, a cold wave of horror washed over me, so chilling it felt like ice water flooding my veins. I looked down at the glass in my hand. The deep red liquid that moments ago had been just a drink, just a prop in my sobriety, now looked like a cup of poison, Every nerve in my body screamed at me to throw it across the room, to confront Marcus, to cause a scene. But I did none of those things. I looked at David, and a silent understanding passed between us. I gave him a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was all the confirmation he needed. He straightened up, gave a slight touch to the brim of his cap, and said quietly, "I'll be nearby if you need anything, miss." Then he walked away, disappearing back into the shadows of the restaurant. My mind raced. Marcus, my brother, the man who raised me, who sacrificed for me, who was supposed to be the only family I had left in this world. He had just tried to poison me. The thought was so monstrous, so incomprehensible, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. But the cold, hard logic was undeniable. The questions about my will, the reminder about my sleep apnea, the convenient dance that took both of them away from the table. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. The song ended. I saw Marcus and Vanessa making their way back to the table, their faces flushed with laughter. They looked so normal, so happy, so innocent. My brother, walking toward me with a smile. Minutes after poisoning my drink, the coldness inside me crystallized into something else, something hard and sharp and clear. It was resolve. As they sat down, I put on the performance of my life. I clutched my stomach, letting out a soft groan. "Sarah," Vanessa's face filled with theatrical concern. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, forcing a pained expression onto my face. "My stomach," I said, my voice deliberately weak. "It just seized up on me. An old IBS problem. I think I need to get home." Marcus stood up immediately, reaching for my arm. "Do you need a doctor? Let us drive you home." This was the critical moment. I couldn't let them near me. I couldn't let them see where I went, or what I did next. "No, I said, waving him off. "I've already called an Uber. It's waiting outside. I just need to lie down. This happens sometimes." "Are you sure?" Marcus pressed, his hand still on my arm. His touch felt like a brand burning through my sleeve. "I'm sure," I said firmly. I steadied myself against the table, and in that moment, with a motion that looked entirely accidental, I knocked over the tall glass of cranberry juice. The red liquid spilled across the white tablecloth like a pool of blood, spreading out in an accusing stain. "Oh, clumsy me," I muttered. While they were distracted, calling for a waiter to help clean up, I grabbed the thick cloth napkin that had absorbed most of the spill. It was heavy and damp in my hand, the cranberry juice soaking into the expensive linen. Under the guise of wiping my hands, I quickly folded it and shoved it deep into my purse. It was my only evidence, my only proof of the terrible truth. I didn't wait for them to say another word. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked away as quickly as my shaking legs would allow. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see the look on their faces, the satisfaction, the relief, the belief that their plan was working. 15 minutes later, I was in the back of a silent Uber, the city lights blurring into streaks of color through the window. My hand was still in my purse, clutching the damp napkin. I didn't feel anger yet. That would come later. Right now, all I felt was a profound, chilling clarity. The trap had been set for me tonight, but I wasn't going to fall into it. Because as I held that napkin, the evidence of my brother's betrayal soaked into expensive linen. I knew something he didn't. The game had just changed, and I was about to become a player he had never anticipated. The Uber dropped me off 3 blocks from my apartment. I stood under the harsh glow of a streetlight, a heavy weight in my purse. My apartment was just down the street, its windows dark and waiting, but I couldn't go home. Not yet. Home was where Marcus had been just last week, helping me set up my new television. Home was where he knew the layout, knew my routines, knew that I slept with my CPAP machine in a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Home felt like a trap, I needed certainty. I needed facts. I needed to know exactly what my brother had put in that glass. I walked against the flow of late-night pedestrians, moving away from my quiet residential neighborhood and toward the harsh, impersonal lights of the downtown medical district. There was a place I knew, a 24-hour private diagnostic laboratory tucked away in a medical building, the kind of facility that catered to wealthy clients who valued speed and discretion over everything else. My company had used them for executive health screenings. I pushed through the automatic glass doors into a lobby that felt sterile and cold. The air smelled of antiseptic and industrial cleaning solutions. A young man sat behind a thick pane of protective glass, his face illuminated by the glow of a computer monitor. He looked up, his expression professionally neutral. I pulled the damp napkin from my purse. I'd sealed it inside a plastic bag I'd grabbed from a coffee shop trash can on the walkover. I placed it in the transaction drawer. I need a full toxicology screening on this, I said, my voice steady, despite the chaos inside me. I need to know everything that's on this fabric, every substance, organic and inorganic. And I need it done tonight. Money isn't an issue. The technician, whose name tag read Ben, didn't even blink. He slid the drawer back, examined the sample with professional detachment, and began typing. A Priority 1 toxicology panel is expensive, he said flatly. We're talking $5,000 for the rush processing. Just do it, I said, pulling out my credit card. He ran the card, slid a form toward me, and pointed to a line at the bottom. I'll need contact information to send the encrypted results. Should be about 3 to 4 hours. I wrote down my private email address, pushed the form back, and turned to leave. There was a small waiting area with uncomfortable plastic chairs, but I couldn't sit there. I couldn't be still. The walls felt like they were closing in. I found an all-night diner 2 blocks away, the kind of place that existed outside of time. Harsh fluorescent lights, cracked vinyl booths, and a waitress who looked like she'd been working the graveyard shift since the 1980s. I ordered black coffee I had no intention of drinking and slid into a booth by the window. The city's nocturnal life unfolded outside. Taxis prowled for fares. Couples stumbled home from bars. A homeless man pushed a shopping cart filled with his entire world. My mind started to work, processing the situation with the same methodical logic I used for marketing campaigns. My first instinct was to call the police, report the crime, let the justice system handle it. But I immediately dismissed the thought. A police report would create a public record. The story would leak. I could see the headlines now. Tech VP claims brother poisoned her at celebration dinner. My name, my company's name, my career. Everything would be forever tied to this sordid act of family betrayal. And what if they didn't believe me? Marcus was a volunteer firefighter, beloved in the community. I was recently divorced, under stress from a new high-pressure job. He could paint me as unstable, paranoid, looking for attention. No, this wasn't a crime that could be healed by a public trial and a prison sentence. This was cancer within my own family. It required not a policeman's handcuffs, but a surgeon's scalpel, a private, precise, and radical excision. I thought back, searching for the signs I must have missed. I remembered Marcus as a teenager, staying up late to help me with algebra homework. But I also remembered him lying about where he'd been, coming home smelling of cigarette smoke and claiming he'd been at the library. I remembered him walking me down the aisle at my wedding, tears in his eyes. But I also remembered him asking to borrow $10,000 from my wedding gift money I never saw again. I remembered him being there for me during my divorce, but I also remembered him asking detailed questions about my settlement, my assets, my life insurance policy. The pattern had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. My phone buzzed on the table, making me jump. It was an email, The subject line was a sterile string of numbers. A case file ID. My heart hammered against my ribs. 3 hours and 42 minutes had passed in what felt like both seconds and lifetimes. I took a deep breath and opened the encrypted file. The document was filled with chemical names and technical jargon, but there was a summary at the top written in plain English for the client. Substances detected: flunitrazepam, rohypnol, 2.5 mg concentration, zolpidem, Ambien, 45 mg concentration. Clinical note: the detected combination of substances represents a dangerous sedative mixture. Rohypnol, flunitrazepam, is a potent benzodiazepine commonly known as a date rape drug due to its ability to cause rapid unconsciousness and amnesia. The concentration detected would induce loss of consciousness within 15 to 30 minutes of ingestion. Zolpidem at this dosage is 4.5 times the maximum recommended therapeutic dose. When combined with rohypnol, this mixture would cause profound respiratory depression. For an individual with documented sleep apnea, condition where breathing repeatedly stops during sleep, this combination would be extremely dangerous, potentially fatal. Without proper breathing support, CPAP machine, respiratory failure would be highly likely. Death would likely be attributed to sleep apnea complications rather than drug intoxication, unless specific testing was performed. I read it twice, then a third time. The cold, clinical language somehow made it worse. This wasn't just about knocking me out. This wasn't about robbery. Marcus knew about my sleep apnea. He knew I used a CPAP machine every night. He knew that without it, my breathing could stop during deep sleep. This was designed to kill me, to make it look like a tragic accident. A woman who forgot to use her CPAP machine after a celebratory dinner, who stopped breathing in her sleep. Natural causes, no investigation, no suspicion, just a grieving brother collecting life insurance. I closed the email and sat in the diner booth, staring at my untouched coffee as it grew cold. A tiny, desperate part of me had been clinging to the hope that this was all a mistake, a misunderstanding. Maybe David the security guard had been mistaken. Maybe the substance was something harmless. But that hope was gone now, obliterated by cold, hard science. The document was a death certificate that, thanks to one vigilant security guard, wouldn't be needed. I looked out the diner window. The first hints of dawn were beginning to soften the edges of the city's skyline. A new day was beginning. I felt no rage, no hot anger. Those emotions were too chaotic, too uncontrolled. What I felt was a profound, icy calm, the kind of calm that comes when all uncertainty is stripped away and only the brutal, unavoidable truth remains. My brother had tried to murder me for money, and now I knew exactly what I had to do. I picked up my phone, but I didn't dial 911. I dialed the private number of my best friend, the woman who'd been my roommate in college, my maid of honor at my wedding, and the smartest attorney I'd ever known. Rebecca Walsh answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Sarah, it's 5 a.m. Are you okay?" "Rebecca," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I need to see you. Now. And I need you to bring your investigator contacts. All of them." There was a pause. Then her voice sharpened, all traces of sleep vanishing. "My office. 30 minutes. I'll make coffee." The line went dead. I left cash on the table for the coffee I hadn't drunk and walked out into the early morning. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was a beautiful morning, and my brother had no idea it was the first day of the rest of his ruined life. Rebecca's law office was in a sleek glass tower downtown, the kind of building that screamed success and discretion in equal measure. When I arrived, the main lobby was empty, except for a security guard who barely looked up from his newspaper. The private elevator to her floor Worked with my guest keycard, the one she'd given me years ago, with the words, "For emergencies only." This qualified. The doors opened directly into her personal office. Rebecca was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a mug of coffee in her hand, silhouetted against the growing dawn. She turned as I entered, and her sharp, hazel eyes scanned my face with the practiced assessment of someone trained to read people. "You look like you've been through a war," she said quietly. "The war is just beginning," I replied. I sat down in one of her leather chairs and told her everything: the restaurant, the celebration, Marcus's questions about my will and beneficiaries, the dance, David's warning, the napkin, the lab. I pulled out my phone and showed her the toxicology report. Rebecca read it in silence, her expression growing harder with each line. When she finished, she placed the phone down gently on her desk. Her knuckles were white. "That son of a bitch," she whispered. Then louder, "That calculating, murdering son of a bitch." She stood up and began to pace, a coiled spring of focused energy. "First call is to the DA. I know him personally. We'll have a warrant for Marcus's arrest before lunch. Attempted murder, premeditated. With this lab report and the guard's testimony, it's open and shut." I held up my hand. "No." She stopped pacing and stared at me. "No, Sarah, he tried to kill you. And what happens then?" I asked, voice quiet but firm. "Headlines, a public trial, my career under a microscope, every detail of my life, my divorce, my sobriety, all of it dragged through the media. Is that justice, Rebecca? Is that victory?" She was silent for a long moment, studying my face. She understood. This wasn't about what was legal. This was about what was right. "So what do you want?" she asked. "This isn't about punishment," I said slowly, working through the thoughts that had been forming during the long night. "This is about correction, a permanent, irreversible adjustment of reality." I leaned forward. "I want to know why. I want to understand what drove him to this. And then I want to take away whatever he was trying to get. I want him to realize that his plan didn't just fail, it destroyed him. But I want it done privately. No public scandal, no destroying our parents' memory, just consequences." A slow, dangerous smile touched Rebecca's lips. It was the same smile she got before she demolished opposing counsel in court. "All right," she said. "If we're going to do this, we do it my way. We need more than this lab report. We need a complete picture. We need to know everything about him and Vanessa. Every dollar they owe, every secret they're keeping, every weakness in their armor." She walked over to her laptop, her movements filled with purpose. "I know a firm, ex-FBI, former IRS investigators. They're ghosts. They can find out what brand of toothpaste Vanessa uses from 3 states away. I'll have a team on them by sunrise." I nodded. "Good. While they're digging, I'll play my part." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "The part they expect," I explained. "The oblivious little sister, the easy target. They need to believe their plan almost worked, that I had a minor scare, and nothing more. They need to feel safe." I pulled out my phone. "I'm going to call Marcus this morning. Tell him I just had food poisoning. Tell him I'm updating my will and trust documents, and that he's still my primary beneficiary. I'm going to dangle the inheritance right in front of him." Rebecca's smile widened. "Let their greed make them stupid." Classic strategy. She looked at a framed photo on her bookshelf. It was the 2 of us in college, young and carefree, arms around each other at graduation. "Your brother doesn't know who he's dealing with," she said softly. "He still sees you as the little girl he raised. He has no idea you've become someone who builds empires. He's about to find out," I said. I didn't have to wait long. At 9 a.m., as I was sitting in my apartment with a cup of tea, my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Marcus's name. I let it ring 4 times. a deliberate hesitation to mask the fact that I had been expecting this call with absolute certainty. Finally, I answered, composing my voice to sound tired, a little weak. "Hello? Sarah? Oh, thank God you answered." Marcus's voice was a symphony of manufactured concern. He sounded breathless, frantic, Oscar-worthy in its performance. "Vanessa and we didn't sleep at all last night. We kept calling, but it went to voicemail. Are you okay? What happened? Did you go to the hospital?" I could hear the rapid-fire questions for what they were. Not concern for my well-being, but a desperate search for information. He needed to know if his plan had failed, if it had been discovered, if I suspected anything. I leaned back against my couch cushions and prepared to give him exactly what he wanted to hear. "Easy, Marcus. I'm all right," I said, with a soft chuckle, as if dismissing his worry. "Just a bit of a scare, that's all. I actually went to urgent care this morning." I paused, letting him hang on the words. "The doctor said it was nothing more than a bad case of food poisoning. All that rich food, the sauces. My stomach isn't what it used to be. He said it can sometimes feel really serious. Pressure in the chest, nausea, but he ran some tests. Everything's fine." I could almost feel the wave of relief coming through the phone, a quiet exhale. The tension in his voice immediately slackened. "Food poisoning," he repeated. "Are you sure that's all it was? You looked so pale. You left in such a hurry." "The doctor is sure, and so am I," I said, letting a note of finality into my tone. "My body's just not as resilient as it used to be, I guess. Getting older." I sighed, a long, weary sound I had practiced in my head. It was designed to sound like a woman contemplating her own mortality. "You know, Marcus," I began, my voice softer now, more reflective. "That whole episode last night really got me thinking." "Thinking about what?" he asked, and I could hear the shift in his voice. The fake worry was fading, replaced by sharp, focused curiosity. "About the future, about making sure things are in order," I said. "You get to my age, especially after a health scare like that, and you realize time isn't guaranteed." Silence. He was listening intently now. "I've actually been on the phone with Rebecca this morning," I continued, dropping her name deliberately. "We've been discussing my estate, the promotion, the $250,000 salary, the stock options worth over $2 million. It changes things. It complicates things." "Right. Yeah, of course," Marcus said quickly, his voice dripping with barely concealed anticipation. "And I've decided," I said, delivering the bait with perfect, casual precision, "that the best way to handle everything is to set up a comprehensive family trust, a significant one. I want to make sure you and Vanessa are taken care of properly. You've done so much for me, Marcus. You sacrificed your whole life for me. This is my way of making sure you're secure." Silence. For a full 5 seconds, there was absolute silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the gears turning in his head. I could almost feel the relief, the greed, the overwhelming rush of victory washing over him. The failed murder attempt, the close call, the lingering anxiety, all of it evaporated in an instant, replaced by the dazzling promise of a legally binding fortune. "A trust," he finally stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "Sarah, that's incredible. You don't have to do that. Vanessa and we're doing fine." The protest was so weak, so transparent, it was almost laughable. "Nonsense," I said warmly, playing the role of the grateful little sister to perfection. "You're my only family, Marcus. Who else would I do this for? This is about honoring Mom and Dad's memory. They'd want me to take care of you the way you took care of me." I don't know what to say," he said, and for the first time, I believed he was telling the truth. His mind was so full of dollar signs, he couldn't form a coherent thought. "Don't say anything," I said gently. "Just know that I love you. Rebecca will need you and Vanessa to come in next Tuesday to sign some preliminary documents. We'll talk more then. For now, I need to rest. I'm more tired than I thought. Of course. You rest. And Sarah? Yes? Thank you. Really, thank you. I hung up the phone and placed it softly on my coffee table. The silence of my apartment rushed back in. I stared at the dark screen, my reflection a faint ghost on its surface. I felt no joy, no triumph, just a grim, chilling satisfaction. The performance was a success. I had weaponized his own monstrous greed against him, and it had worked perfectly. He felt safe. He felt victorious. He would be looking for a pen to sign his name, not for shadows in the corners. I had bought us time for Rebecca's investigators to dig into every corner of his life, time for me to build a trap so perfect, so inescapable, that when it closed around him, he wouldn't even see it coming. The game was now being played on my terms, by my rules, and my brother had no idea he had already lost. A week passed. It was the longest, most disciplined week of my life. I went to work, smiled at colleagues, attended meetings about Q4 marketing strategies. I responded to Marcus's daily phone calls, which came like clockwork. He would ask about my health, my appetite, my conversations with Rebecca. Each question was a gentle probe, a nervous check to ensure the golden goose was still healthy and laying eggs. I played my part perfectly. The younger sister, grateful for his concern, completely oblivious to the current pulling her under. I told him Rebecca was working through the legal complexities, that these things take time, that we'd all meet on Tuesday to finalize everything. He was patient. Of course he was. What's another week of waiting when you believe $2 million is the prize at the end? While I was feeding him reassurances, Rebecca's investigators were moving through his life like sharks through dark water. On the 8th day, an email arrived from Rebecca. The subject line was a single word: report. I opened the attachment, and what I read made my blood run cold. The document wasn't just a financial report. It was a portrait of desperation, so complete, so total, that it made the attempted murder suddenly, terribly, understandable. Financial summary: Marcus and Vanessa, Callahan, total unsecured, debt, $322,847. The number sat at the top of the page, like an accusation. I scrolled through the itemized list, each line another small horror. Credit cards, 7 of them, all maxed out. American Express, Visa, MasterCard, Discover. The statements told a story of a life lived on borrowed money and broken promises. $4,200 at luxury hotels in Miami, $8,900 at a boutique in Manhattan, $2,100 for a single dinner in Las Vegas, $15,000 at an online gambling site, $6,700 at another gambling site, $12,400 at a third. The list went on and on. Designer clothes, expensive watches, first-class plane tickets to places they couldn't afford. But that was just the beginning. Vehicle debt. Leased BMW M5, Marcus. $1,240 month, 4 months delinquent leased Mercedes SUV, Vanessa. $1,180 month, 4 months delinquent repossession. Notices sent for both vehicles. Mortgage. Primary residence. $3,200 month, 90 days delinquent foreclosure proceedings. Initiated second mortgage, taken out 18 months ago. $850 month, also delinquent. I stared at that last line. I had given them the down payment for that house as a wedding gift 10 years ago. $75,000 I'd saved for years. Money I'd given them to build a life, to build a family. They'd borrowed against it, bled the equity dry, and now they were losing it anyway. Personal loans. Private lender, number 1, $45,000 at 18% interest. Private lender, number 2, $32,000 at 22% interest. Private lender, number 3, $68,000 at 24% interest. These weren't banks. These were loan sharks, the kind of people who don't send polite letters when you miss a payment. The kind of people who send something much worse than letters. I kept reading, my hands trembling slightly. The investigators had tracked Marcus's movements over the past 6 months. Underground poker games in warehouse districts, high-stakes sports betting through illegal bookies, online gambling sites that operated in legal gray areas. The pattern was clear. He was chasing losses, betting bigger to try to win back what he'd already lost. The classic spiral of addiction. One note from the investigators stood out. Subject has been observed at Riverside Casino Boat 23 times in past 90 days. Average stay, 6 to 8 hours. Interviewed dealer, confidential source, who confirmed subject regularly, bets $500 to $1,000 per hand at blackjack tables. Source stated subject has been banned from several establishments for erratic behavior when losing. I closed my eyes. Marcus, my brother, the man who taught me to balance a checkbook, who lectured me about fiscal responsibility, who walked me through my first apartment budget. He was drowning, and instead of asking for help, instead of reaching out to the one person who would have done anything to save him, he'd decided to murder me for the life preserver. But the report wasn't finished. I scrolled to the next section, and my heart stopped. Life insurance investigation. The investigators had found it. A life insurance policy in my name. $3 million. Beneficiary, Marcus Callahan. Policy date, 8 months ago. I stared at the scanned document. There was my signature at the bottom, except I had no memory of signing it. The investigator's note explained. Policy was purchased through a broker who frequently sells to high net worth individuals. Contacted broker under pretext. Broker confirmed appointment occurred at subject Marcus Callahan's residence on March 15th. Sarah Callahan was present, but broker noted she seemed tired, possibly intoxicated, didn't ask many questions. Broker stated Marcus handled most of the conversation and paperwork. March 15th, I flipped through my calendar app, scrolling back. There it was. Dinner at Marcus's, game night. I remembered that night now. Through the fog, Vanessa had made dinner. Marcus had insisted I have just one glass of wine to celebrate getting the promotion interview. You're not driving, he'd said. Live a little. I'd had 2 glasses, maybe 3. My memory of the evening was fuzzy. Had there been someone else there? A man in a suit. I'd thought he was one of Marcus's firefighter friends. Oh God, I'd signed my own death warrant that night, too drunk to understand what I was doing, trusting my brother completely. The investigators had gone further. Computer forensics. They'd hired a tech specialist who'd gained remote access to Marcus's home computer. The search history was damning. How long does Rohypnol stay in system after death? Will autopsy detect sleeping pills in sleep apnea death? Natural causes versus suspicious death investigation. How to collect life insurance payout quickly. Statute of limitations. Life insurance fraud. Signs of drug overdose versus sleep apnea death. The dates on the searches went back months. This wasn't a sudden, desperate act. This was a long-term plan, researched and refined. Fire station investigation. The final section made me feel physically ill. The investigators had contacted the fire station where Marcus volunteered. Under the guise of a routine equipment audit, they'd discovered that the medical supply locker had been accessed 47 times in the past 6 months during off hours. Marcus's access card. Inventory showed missing items. 15 Zolpidem, Ambien, tablets, 8 flunitrazepam, Rohypnol, tablets, various other sedatives. Security footage showed Marcus entering the medical supply room at 11:47 p.m. on multiple occasions. The timestamps corresponded with nights he'd told Vanessa he was doing overnight training exercises. He'd stolen the drugs that were meant to save lives. Drugs kept at a fire station to help people in crisis. And he'd used them to try to murder his own sister. I sat back from my laptop, the weight of it all crashing over me. This wasn't just about greed. This wasn't even just about desperation. This was about a man who had looked at every option, every possible solution to his problems, and had decided that killing me was the easiest path forward. Not asking for help, not declaring bankruptcy, not getting treatment for his gambling addiction. Murder. My phone rang. "Rebecca, did you read it?" she asked, her voice tight. "I read it," I replied, my voice hollow. "Sarah, this is worse than we thought. The life insurance policy, the planning, the theft from the fire station. This is premeditated on a level that's genuinely chilling. I know we have enough evidence to put him away for 20 years. Attempted murder, fraud, theft, forgery. The DA would salivate over a case this airtight." I was silent for a long moment, staring out my apartment window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Marcus was going about his day, believing he'd won, believing that on Tuesday, he'd sign papers that would solve all his problems. "No police," I said quietly. "Not yet. Sarah, one more week, Rebecca. I need to understand something." "Understand what?" "Whether there's anything left of my brother in there, or if the man who raised me is completely gone." Rebecca was quiet. Then, "The meeting is still on for Tuesday, 2 p.m., my conference room. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I thought about the little girl who'd lost her parents at 12, the teenager who'd had only one person in the world to count on, the woman who'd built a career, survived a divorce, gotten sober, and succeeded despite everything. That woman deserved answers. She deserved to look her would-be murderer in the eye and ask him why. "I'm sure," I said. "Set it up exactly as we planned." "And Rebecca?" "Yes. Make sure security is there, not just for my protection, for his, because when he sees what we found, I don't know what he'll do." Tuesday arrived under gray skies that threatened rain. I dressed carefully that morning. A navy blue suit that meant business. Minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. I wanted to look like the VP I'd become, not the little sister he remembered. I arrived at Rebecca's office an hour early. She was already there, along with 2 other people I didn't recognize. "Sarah," Rebecca said, gesturing to them. "This is Detective Jennifer Morrison and her partner, Detective Frank Chen. They're not here in an official capacity yet, but they've reviewed the evidence and they're prepared to step in if necessary." Detective Morrison extended her hand. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Callahan, I want you to know that what your brother attempted to do, it's one of the most calculated cases I've seen. Regardless of how this meeting goes, this case will be prosecuted." "After the meeting," I said firmly. "I need this confrontation first. I need to understand." She nodded slowly. "We'll be in the next room. There are cameras in the conference room recording everything. If at any point you feel unsafe, just say the word stop, and we'll be there in seconds." The conference room had been prepared. A long mahogany table, 6 blue folders stacked neatly in front of Rebecca's chair, each one containing a different piece of the evidence against Marcus. At 1:55 p.m., the receptionist called. "Ms. Walsh, your 2 o'clock is here. Send them in," Rebecca said. The door opened, and Marcus walked in with Vanessa. They were dressed like they were attending a celebration. Marcus in a new suit I'd never seen before. Vanessa in a designer dress, her hair professionally styled. They practically glowed with barely contained excitement. Marcus saw me, and his face lit up with what looked like genuine affection. "Sarah!" He crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. I stood rigid, enduring the embrace. He smelled of expensive cologne and lies. Vanessa kissed my cheek. "You look wonderful, Sarah. Professional and powerful. Our little girl, all grown up." Our little girl, as if she'd had anything to do with raising me. They took seats on the opposite side of the table, holding hands like giddy newlyweds. Marcus's eyes kept drifting to the blue folders. Rebecca remained standing, her expression professionally neutral. "Thank you both for coming," she began. Before we proceed with any signing, there are a few preliminary items we need to address. Marcus's smile faltered, just slightly. Preliminary items? Standard procedure, Rebecca said smoothly. She reached for the first folder. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. This was it, the moment everything changed. Rebecca opened the folder and slid a single document across the polished table. It was the toxicology report. Item 1, Rebecca stated, her voice clinical and detached. This is a toxicology report from a certified laboratory, conducted on a sample retrieved from Sarah's table at the Capitol Grill 2 weeks ago. Marcus's eyes dropped to the paper. His face went rigid, the color draining away, like water down a sink. Rebecca continued, her voice steady and merciless. It details a concentration of rohypnol and zolpidem at levels the lab notes would cause unconsciousness within minutes and likely respiratory failure in an individual with documented sleep apnea. Vanessa stared at the paper, confusion warring with dawning horror on her face. She looked at Marcus, then back at the report. "What is this?" she whispered. "Marcus, what is she talking about?" Before he could answer, Rebecca had already opened the second folder. "Item 2, she announced, sliding the financial report across the table to land beside the first document. A comprehensive analysis of your current financial situation. Total debt, $342,147, 2 vehicles in pending repossession, primary residence in foreclosure proceedings, and multiple loans from private lenders charging interest rates that suggest criminal enterprise." Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. The perfectly styled facade cracked. No, Marcus. You said we were handling it. You said the refinance went through. Item 3, Rebecca interrupted, opening another folder. This one contained the life insurance policy. A $3 million life insurance policy on Sarah Callahan, purchased 8 months ago. Beneficiary, Marcus Callahan. Policy obtained during a social gathering at your residence, where, according to the broker's statement, Sarah appeared to be intoxicated. I spoke for the first time, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. I was drunk, Marcus, at your house, at a dinner you hosted, and you had an insurance broker there to get my signature. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Rebecca wasn't finished. She opened the fourth folder. Item 4, fire station inventory records showing missing sedatives. Security footage showing Marcus Callahan accessing the medical supply room during off hours on 17 separate occasions. Timestamps corresponding with the medications found in Sarah's drink. Folder 5, computer forensics, search history from your home laptop. I won't read all of it, but the highlights include will autopsy detect sleeping pills in sleep apnea death and how to collect life insurance payout quickly. The room was utterly silent, except for Vanessa's quiet sobbing. And finally, Rebecca said, opening the last folder, a sworn statement from David Martinez, security guard at the Capitol Grill, who witnessed you pouring a substance from a small vial into your sister's drink on the evening of October 15th. She laid out all 6 folders in a neat row, a timeline of betrayal documented in official reports and legal evidence. Marcus sat frozen, a statue of terror. Every assumption he'd made, every bit of confidence he'd had walking into this room had been systematically demolished. That's when I spoke again. Why? My voice was quiet, but it filled the room. Marcus slowly raised his eyes to meet mine. For the first time since he'd entered, he really looked at me, and what I saw in his face wasn't defiance or anger. It was shame, deep, corrosive shame. "Sarah, His voice cracked. "Why?" I repeated, harder this time. "You raised me, Marcus. You were the only family I had. When Mom and Dad died, you could have put me in foster care. You could have walked away, but you didn't. You sacrificed everything for me." Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and angry. So tell me why the man who taught me to ride a bike, who stayed up all night helping me study for the SATs, who walked me down the aisle at my wedding, decided the best solution to his problems was to murder me in my sleep. Marcus's face crumbled. I didn't want to, he whispered. Sarah, I swear, I didn't want to, but you were going to. I was drowning. His voice broke completely. The gambling, the debt, these people. Sarah, they were going to kill me. They gave me 30 days. They said if I didn't pay, they'd make it look like an accident. They'd hurt Vanessa. So, you decided to kill me first? My voice rose. Instead of asking me for help? Instead of coming to me and telling me the truth? I was ashamed, he shouted, standing up abruptly. His chair scraped across the floor. How could I ask you for help? You, who built everything from nothing. You, who got sober when your marriage fell apart. You, who never asked anyone for anything. How could I look you in the eye and tell you I'd gambled away everything, that I'd destroyed my life, that I needed my little sister to save me? So murder was easier than honesty? He sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. I told myself it would be painless, that you wouldn't suffer, that you'd just fall asleep and not wake up. The doctors would say it was sleep apnea. Natural causes. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't be afraid. Is that supposed to make it better? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. No. He looked up at me, his face wet with tears. Nothing makes it better. I'm a monster. I know that. The man who raised you, Sarah, he died years ago. He died the first time I sat down at a poker table and bet money we didn't have. Everything since then has just been falling. Vanessa had gone completely silent, staring at her husband as if seeing him for the first time. I stood up slowly. Rebecca tensed, ready to intervene if necessary. But I just looked at my brother, really looked at him, and I saw what he'd become. Not a monster, not a villain, just a broken, desperate man who'd made a series of catastrophic choices and had decided that taking a life was easier than fixing his own. You have two choices, I said, my voice steady, despite the tears still falling. Marcus looked up, a flicker of desperate hope in his eyes. Detective Morrison, I called out. The door to the adjacent room opened, and the detective walked in, her partner behind her. Marcus's face went white. Choice one, I said. The detectives take you into custody right now. You're charged with attempted murder, fraud, forgery, and theft. All of this evidence goes to the district attorney. You'll be convicted. You'll spend the next 20 years in prison. Your life, as you know it, is over. I paused, letting that sink in. Or choice two. Rebecca slid one more document across the table. A thick, legal agreement. You sign this. It's a complete confession to everything. The planning, the drugs, the life insurance fraud, all of it. In exchange, I won't press charges immediately. Instead, you will. I ticked off the items on my fingers. 1. Check yourself into a residential gambling addiction treatment program. Minimum 6 months. 2. Upon completion, you will work with a court-appointed financial counselor to develop a debt repayment plan. 3. You will surrender any claim to the life insurance policy and sign a legal document removing yourself as my beneficiary from any and all accounts. 4. You will voluntarily resign from the fire department. You don't get to keep stealing from people who trust you. 5. You will have 0 contact with me for a minimum of 5 years. After that, if you've completed treatment and stayed clean, we can discuss whether there's any relationship left to salvage. 6. If you violate any single term of this agreement, this confession and all evidence will be immediately delivered to the police, and you will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. You get one chance, Marcus. One chance to save yourself, to become someone who deserves to live, But you don't get to do it at my expense. You don't get my money. You don't get my forgiveness. You get your life and an opportunity to fix it. That's all." The room was silent, except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Marcus stared at the document, then at the detectives, then at me. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you give me anything after what I tried to do?" I thought about that question, about the little girl who lost her parents, about the teenager who had a brother who chose to stay, about the complex, messy truth of family. "Because 26 years ago, you made a choice," I said quietly. "You chose to raise me instead of abandoning me. That choice shaped my entire life. It made me who I am, and I have to believe that the man who made that choice is still in there somewhere, buried under all the bad decisions, in the addiction and the shame." I picked up a pen and placed it on top of the document. "This is me choosing to believe in you one last time. But Marcus, if you fail, if you run, if you violate this agreement in any way, I will not hesitate. I will bury you. Do you understand?" He picked up the pen with a shaking hand. "I understand," he whispered. He signed his name on the line. His signature was barely legible, the scroll of a man signing away his old life. Vanessa signed too, tears falling onto the paper and smudging the ink. Detective Morrison witnessed the signatures, her expression unreadable. Marcus stood up slowly. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. "The treatment facility is expecting you tomorrow morning," Rebecca said, handing him a card. "They've been briefed on your situation. Miss the check-in, and the police will be at your door within an hour." He took the card with a numb nod. "Marcus," I said, as he reached the door. He turned back, his eyes red and hollow. "I hope you find yourself again. I really do. But the man I knew, the brother I loved, he died the moment you put those pills in my drink. If you ever want to meet me again, you'll have to become someone new, someone better, someone I can trust, not to kill me for money." He nodded once, his throat working as he tried to speak, and failed. Then he and Vanessa walked out of the conference room, leaving behind their dreams of easy money and their carefully constructed lies. The door closed behind them with a quiet click. I sank into my chair, suddenly exhausted. Rebecca placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did good," she said softly. "Did I?" I asked. "Or did I just let a would-be murderer walk free?" Detective Morrison spoke up. "For what it's worth, Miss Callahan, I've seen cases like this before. Addiction turns people into strangers. Sometimes prison is the answer. Sometimes treatment is. You gave him the option most people don't get, a chance to face what he's become. Whether he takes it is up to him. And if he doesn't?" I asked. She tapped the signed confession. "Then he'll have plenty of time in prison to reflect on the choice he should have made." 3 months later, I'm standing in the lobby of the Greenwood Recovery Center, a residential treatment facility about 2 hours north of the city. The walls are painted in calm blues and greens. There's a garden visible through the windows, and patients in casual clothes walk along the paths. I'm not here to see Marcus. He's still in his 6th month of treatment. Treatment stipulates no contact for 5 years. I'm here because I've been invited to speak. The facility's director, Dr. Patricia Williams, meets me in the lobby. "Ms. Callahan, thank you so much for coming," she says, shaking my hand warmly. "Your story, what you've chosen to do instead of prosecution, it's inspired our entire program model." She leads me to a conference room where about 30 people sit in a circle, patients in various stages of recovery. Some look hopeful, others look broken. All of them are fighting demons they thought they could control. "Everyone," Dr. Williams says. "This is Sarah Callahan. She's here to talk about the impact of addiction on families, about boundaries and consequences, and the difference between enabling and supporting recovery." I take a seat and look at the faces watching me, and I tell them my story, not to shame anyone, but to show them what their addiction costs, to make them understand that the people they hurt, the people they steal from, the people they lie to, are real, are suffering, are making impossible choices about how to love someone who's become dangerous. When I finish, hands go up. A young man in his 20s asks, "Do you think you'll ever forgive your brother?" I consider the question carefully. "I don't know," I answer honestly. Forgiveness isn't something I owe him. It's not a prize he gets for completing treatment. What I hope is that 5 years from now, when our no-contact period ends, he'll have become someone who doesn't need my forgiveness because he's forgiven himself and actually changed. An older woman asks, "How did you find the strength not to press charges?" I would have wanted him to suffer. I did want him to suffer, I admit. Part of me still does, but I realized that watching him rot in prison wouldn't heal me. It wouldn't give me back the brother I lost. What might heal me is knowing I gave the last piece of my old family one final chance to save himself. If he wastes it, that's on him, but at least I'll know I tried. After the session, Dr. Williams walks me to my car. "How is he doing?" I ask, finally allowing myself the question. "In treatment, I mean. I know you can't share details, but is he trying?" She smiles gently. "I can tell you that he attended every single group session, that he's been honest about his addiction in a way that's helping other patients, and that he has your photo on his desk with a note that says, 'The person I almost killed to feed my addiction. Never again.'" My eyes fill with tears. "That's something," I whisper. "It's a start," she agrees. I drive back to the city as the sun sets, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. My phone rings. "Rebecca, how did it go?" she asks. "Better than expected," I say. I think maybe telling the story helps. Not just him, but me too. Good, because I have news. The foundation paperwork went through. The foundation? The one you asked me to set up last month. The Sarah and Marcus Callahan Second Chances Foundation. It's official. You can start accepting applications for gambling addiction treatment scholarships next week. I smile. The first genuine smile I've felt in months. When Marcus tried to poison me, he set a chain of events in motion that was supposed to end in my death and his financial salvation. Instead, it ended in his treatment, in a foundation that will help hundreds of people escape the same addiction that consumed him. From poison, we created purpose. From attempted murder, we built a path to recovery, not just for him, for everyone fighting the same battle. 5 years later, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in the Arts District. It's a sunny Saturday morning, and the place is filled with the comfortable hum of conversation and the smell of espresso. My phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Sarah, it's Marcus. The 5 years are up. I know I have no right to ask, but would you be willing to meet? Just coffee, just talking. I understand if the answer is no. M." I stare at the message for a long time. Rebecca and I had discussed this moment, what I would feel, what I would want. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever trust him again. I don't know if we'll ever have anything resembling the relationship we once had. But I do know this. The brother who tried to kill me did die that night at the restaurant. The question is whether the man who's been in recovery for 5 years, who's worked full-time as a counselor at the treatment center, who's rebuilt his life from absolute zero, is someone worth knowing. I type out a response. Tuesday, 10 a.m., the Cornerstone Cafe on 5th Street. 1 hour. We'll see how it goes. I hit send. 5 years ago, a security guard named David saw something wrong and spoke up. That split-second decision to warn a stranger saved my life and changed the course of 2 others. Now it's my turn to make a choice, to see if redemption is real, to see if my brother found himself again in those 5 years, or to finally, permanently close a chapter of my life. Tuesday will tell. Thank you for watching this story. If you or someone you love is struggling with gambling addiction, please know that help is available. Resources and hotlines are linked in the description below. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become the ones we need protection from. But sometimes, just sometimes, they can also become people who find their way. Like and subscribe if you believe in second chances, but also in boundaries. Share this story if you think it might help someone understand the real cost of addiction. And remember, speaking up, like David the security guard did, can save a life. See you in the next video.